Okay, so the Canon 6D, arguably one of the greatest cameras for its time, but it's definitely had its time. It's come and it's gone. We're now in 2023, so how does it stack up? How does it stack up against what's in the market? Who should buy this camera? And yeah, is it still even worth picking one up secondhand? So today, we're going to be covering exactly that. But for all my people that don't want to watch the whole video, a little bit of a too long didn't watch, if you will, a TLDW. If this sounds like you, the Canon 6D is for you. And if it doesn't sound like you, the Canon 6D is not for you. And at the end of this video, I'm going to recommend some cameras and other alternatives in somewhat of a similar price range or performance range that the Canon 6D had when it first released. So if this sounds like you, Canon 6D is for you. All right, so the camera is for beginners and intermediates who want a Canon full frame experience. This is what this camera really offers, especially at a really entry level price range. Also, you don't want to spend much on lenses because you get to take advantage of all the EF glass or the secondhand used EF glass. My goodness me, this is an absolute deal, an absolute steal. You can pick up like the 24-70 f2.8 Mark 1, sure, you might be able to pick up the Mark 2 as well, but for an absolute fraction of the price that you would be able to get the 24-70 f2.8 RF. So keep that in mind. The lenses are absolutely dirt cheap. Also, you don't really mind on waiting for autofocus to catch up. Now, if you're shooting events, if you're shooting sports, if you're shooting wildlife, this camera probably isn't for you, and it probably never was for you. But keep in mind that if you're shooting landscapes, if you're shooting portraits, whatever the case where you don't really need to have super fast autofocus, this camera could be for you. And it's only got 11 autofocus points, so your autofocus is definitely limited. Also, you don't shoot video at all. I mean, not even on the radar video creation for you. So if that is a thing for you, if you're 100% just into photography, the Canon 6D, if you are this much into video, it's not for you. And also, you're happy to buy secondhand. They don't make these anymore at all. So keep that in mind. If this sounds like you, the Canon 6D is for you. If not, keep watching. And if it is, keep watching because I'm about to go through the whole spec list. I'm about to go through this and that, what I love, what I didn't love, because I had one for years and years and years. And believe me, it definitely got its fair share of use. So with that being said, let's dive into today's video and let's cover the Canon 6D in 2023. All right, so let's first cover the specs, the main specs. It's rocking a 20 megapixel sensor. Now, I know this sounds pretty deflating on paper, but to be honest with you, hold on. My Canon R6 also has a 20 megapixel sensor, and this was a camera released in 2020. So a solid nearly 10 years older than the 6D. The Canon R6 has a similar megapixel count. Now, why is this? Well, a low megapixel count actually increases low light performance. It makes high ISOs perform a whole lot better. For example, I'm shooting on a Canon R5C right now, which has a 45 megapixel sensor. And this camera, which is a fraction of the price of the Canon R5C, is going to perform better in low light naturally. So keep that in mind. The 20 megapixel sensor is not the end of the world. As I mentioned in the TLDW, if you will, it's only got 11 autofocus points. Keep this in mind. This is a little bit of a deal breaker for some people, not for others. It's also got one card slot and one card slot only. It supports SD cards and that's it. So if you're a pro and you're, say, capturing a wedding and you want to make sure you're backing up twice, this camera cannot do that. And then of course, it's capped out at 1080p 30 FPS video recording, and that video recording is pretty damn bad. Now, of course, it doesn't look absolutely horrible, and it's going to look better than a Samsung Galaxy S3 from, 2008 or 9 or whenever the hell that was released. But either way, it's not ideal. It definitely doesn't stack up in today's market, so yeah, keep that in mind. If you're just shooting a few little family moments, if you will, sure. You know what? Actually, not even sure. Just shoot that on your phone. But either way, this camera is a definite write-off for video shooters. What does this camera do well? Well, first up, low light photos, it absolutely dominates. This was actually known as a really good astrophotography camera back in the day. You whack the 16-35 f2.8 Mark 1 on there, and you've got an astrophotography beast. So keep that in mind. Low light photos, it's gonna absolutely crush. And photos in general, it's gonna absolutely crush. You get the Canon colors, which are just stunning, and you get that beautiful full frame sensor giving you a bit more depth and blur in the background, which is just gorgeous, especially if you're coming from a Canon camera, a Canon body that's like a 600 or a 700D. This is a step up like no tomorrow. You're gonna notice image quality difference just go through the roof. The colors are also gorgeous. The Canon colors, like I just mentioned, I don't know what it is, but especially in photo, the Canon colors are just delicious. They're gorgeous. I love them. I've been shooting Canon more or less my whole photography and videography career. So anytime someone sends me Sony footage or Sony photos or whatever, not throwing shade on Sony, but yeah, let's just say I'm happier when they're shooting with Canon. So just keep that in mind. You also get an amazing lens selection. I also mentioned this in the TLDW that you can pick up absolute steal, absolute bargain lenses right now for the EF mount. So keep this in mind. Some of the favorites are the 70-200 f2.8 Mark II. I know this was and still is quite an expensive lens, but this lens is absolutely insane, especially for the price you can get it at now, which is well below $1,000. The 50mm f1.8, great lens. The 24-70 f2.8 Mark I or Mark II, depending on your budget. Great lenses. The 16-35 f2.8, any of the versions. The Mark II is probably going to be that kind of sweet spot between old and new. There's 3 versions of them. And then the 24-105 f4, absolutely amazing lens. So yeah, keep this in mind. You're playing with really high quality professional gear that was top of its game 5 years ago. And now you can buy it at an absolute fraction of the price. And then last but not least, they're built like a tank. Here's my 6D. It has a crack in the back of the screen. It's not a touch screen, keep that in mind. But yeah, this thing is built like an absolute tank. It has been used, it has been abused, it has been shooting all over the world. You name it, the Canon 6D has really done it all. First things first is the video. Just don't go near it. I'm not even gonna harp on about it. Just if you shoot video, don't go near it. Simple as that, all right? The autofocus speed is also quite slow. It only has 11 autofocus points, which doesn't actually, I guess, speed up or slow down the autofocus system, but the autofocus just isn't super quick. It's gonna take a little bit of time. If you're coming from, let's say, an entry-level mirrorless camera right now, and you're like, yep, I only wanna shoot photos, you are gonna notice a slower difference. It's kind of mind-blowing, but technology has just improved that much from when this camera was released to now. And then it's also got a fixed screen on the back, so it doesn't have that tilty flippy screen, it doesn't have that articulating screen. It's glued into the back, which is a benefit and a con, in my opinion. A pro and a con, a benefit and a con. A pro and a con because one, they're built like just stronger. When less things move, there's less things to break. But of course, that limits you if you're shooting low, if you're shooting high, over here, over there, whatever the case. So yeah, keep that in mind. These are more or less the biggest drawbacks this camera has, at least in my opinion. All right, so is this camera for you? Well, if you're a photographer, I would say yeah. But I mean, you're just a photographer. You're willing to deal with the shortcomings that this camera has, and you're not a pro just yet, but you're definitely moving in that space. Or you just like taking landscape photos. You like going out on the weekend, shooting a sunrise, coming back, whacking some gorgeous raws into your computer, and you're going from there. Then yeah, this camera's for you. But if you want to do anything else, if you want to shoot video, if you want to take photos on a really serious level, cover events, do sports, wildlife, whatever it may be, look at something else. I'd really recommend looking at the Canon R6. I love this camera. I think it's amazing. It definitely is more expensive, and the more expensive lenses come along with it. But with that in mind, it is a much better and bigger camera. So yeah, that's something to consider. If you are in the market for a high-end photography camera that still has some of those benefits from the 6D, I look at the 5D Mark III or the 5D Mark IV. You still get the really cheap lenses, the really well-built body, but you get 2 SD card slots, faster autofocus, and a little bit better video, so keep that in mind as well. And then also, if you do want to step it up once again, I look at getting the R5. The R5 is arguably one of, if not the best photo body that Canon has right now. So yeah, if you want the best, and you're happy to spend the money, then the R5 is where it's at. But with that being said, guys, that wraps up my thoughts on the 6D in 2023. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you're new around here, a subscribe would mean the absolute world.